Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Monsters on the Edge. I am your host, Barnaby, and we have a great show today. It's going to delve way into the whole topic of the Tasmanian tiger or the thylacine. So, guys, I want to thank everyone who came out to the Great Lakes Paranormal Conference. I'm going to mess up my camera here for a second. The Great Lakes Paranormal Conference this weekend. Hopefully, you guys all had a great time and are here to... There we go. And are here to hear some great stuff about the thylacine. So, guys, right off the bat, we wanted to have you share your support for the Untold Radio Network because that's where we are. And we can't do this without you. So check this out.
Show your support for the Untold Radio Network family of shows and join in on the conversation by using super stickers and super chats on YouTube. Got a question you want answered? Ask it live via a super chat and get real-time responses from our show's knowledgeable hosts and guests. Help keep the Untold Radio Network shows running strong. We need your support. Send your super chats and stickers now.
All right, guys. And then I want to, as always, introduce myself. I'm Barnaby. I am from Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. And if you haven't checked us out, check us out. Are you interested in the paranormal, ghosts, spirits, and the metaphysical? How about Mothman, Bigfoot, and other cryptids? What about UFOs, UAPs, and other anomalous phenomenon? Then you need to check out Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. We have all that and more. Watch our series, Caps Road Trip, where we travel across the U.S. in search of these phenomena and bring you not only the history of these locations, events, and encounters, but evidence that we capture along the way. Alongside our team of researchers and investigators, you never know who will be joining in on the investigations. Are you interested in Bigfoot in Upper Michigan? Check out Finding Heighten, a series documenting the Sasquatch activity on a very special 80-acre property just outside of Menominee that has been a hotspot since 2012. Want even more? Check out our podcasts. Whispers from the Dark is the official podcast of Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society and brings you interviews with the top names in the field of paranormal to cryptids and more. Hear witnesses' accounts and go in-depth with the CAPS team to hear more about our ongoing research. Are you more into cryptids? Find links to our all-cryptid show, Monsters on the Edge, on the Untold Radio Network. If you're into spooky, subscribe now and you won't miss a minute of our brand new series coming soon, Spirits of Macville. Follow along as we uncover the haunted history dating back to 1877 of a very well-known location you may have never guessed would be haunted. Head on over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button and you won't miss a minute. Awesome, guys. I appreciate it so much. And if you want to show your support for everything that we do here at Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society, you can do that by heading over to our website, wisconsincaps.com. Click on Shop Our Store. There you can find merchandise and t-shirts, hats, and all kinds of stuff with our logos on. You can wear it and let everyone know that you're a supporter of Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. If you're interested in the Monsters on the Edge shirts, head on over to the Untold Radio Network. They're awesome, they're cool, and you can only get them there. While you're online, head on over to all of our social media platforms. You can find us at Wisconsin Caps at Patreon, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube, or WI Caps on Instagram. If you want to see us in person, I will be presenting at the Kenosha Public Library on October 6th. We are also going to be at the Milwaukee Paranormal Conference, as well as my guest today will be there as well. We are doing a panel on lake monsters and other underwater creatures. And that is Saturday, October 14th. It is a free event. You just have to go online and sign up for the tickets. They're just trying to keep track of how many people are there, so it's free, but you got to get a register for a ticket. That is October 14th, and then October 15th you can join. We have a Bigfoot hike walk that will be led by me, and tickets are available again for that at MilwaukeeParacon.com. Then, guys, we are heading to Lexington, Kentucky, November 18th and 19th for CryptidCon. And I have a special thing here. If you guys watched our show last week with Lyle Blackburn, one of our awesome guests, or one of our awesome fans and super chat members, Charlotte J, in the comments section shared the photo of the three-eared rabbit. So that was on our social media, and I wanted to pull it up here so that everyone that didn't get a chance to see it on social media got a chance to see that. Thank you so much, Charlotte, for sharing that. And awesome. That's really cool. So there you go. There's our three-eared rabbit. All right, guys. And now that takes care of all the stuff that I got off the bat here. All right. Today, guys, my guest is a very well-educated, very well-rounded individual and has an amazing biography here that I'm going to try and read and not mess up. Terry Cullen is the founder and director of the Cullen Vivarium from 1963 to present. He is the founder and director of the Dragonwood Wildlife Conservancy. He is a senior member of the IUCN Crocodile Specialist Group and eight of the subgroups, including the Veterinary Group, the Orinoco Crocodile Recovery Group, and the Human Crocodile Interaction Group. He is a member of the Species Survival Commission, a member of the Crocodile DNA Group, a member of the American Society of Herpetologists and Ichthyologists. Okay, messed that one up. Member of the Mabowaya Foundation for the Conservation of the Philippine Crocodiles. Founder of the Chinese Alligator Project. The conceptualizer and effectuator of the AZA Crocodilian School. The first person to establish a fundraising program for crocodilian conservation. Gonna mess that one up. We'll skip that one. I'm sorry. The first conservation program for the critically endangered Grand Cayman blue iguana. He rediscovered the crested toad in 1963, thought to be extinct since 1920, and rediscovered the Jamaican rock iguana in 1983 that is thought to be extinct since the 1920s, and he is the past chairman of the Gharial Survival Group in the U.S. And without further ado, please welcome Terry Cullen. Hey, Terry.
Hey, Barnaby.
I tried so hard, man. I got most of them.
We're going to have to do 3 rehearsals next time.
I didn't.
I'll get you flashcards, okay?
All right, cool, man. So we are going to get into a lot of really cool stuff here with you. I mean, you have done so many great things, and I know you wanted to say that if there's any questions throughout the show, make sure that we get them in the comments, put them in all caps, or if you're a member of the super chats, hit that up because we got a lot of science stuff here, and some of the stuff I'm sure a lot of people aren't familiar with, and that's why we're going over it. So if you guys have any comments or questions, put them in all caps, and I will star them and get them up in here as soon as we can. A lot of highs, hellos, and welcomes. Good morning to everybody listening. Lee, Resnick, Charlotte, Scott, and T-Sharp. Welcome to the show. Take it away, Terry. It's all yours.
Okay. I just want to make sure we got all of our greetings in there.
That's right. Yep.
The thylacine is one of the more evident situations that we should be utterly ashamed of as a human race. There was just no reason that the extinction should have occurred other than what our culture seems to breed no matter where we go. It's interesting because a very well-known British rock group did a song about that called White Man. They're called Steel Eye Span is the name of the group. If you haven't heard of them, you should. They're considered to be sort of folk rock, but they really are more Renaissance rock, I guess you would say. Incredibly skilled. The primary vocalist is Maddie Pryor, a lady with an amazing voice. But they have really, over the years with that song, brought attention to what we've done. We meaning all the people. I don't want to really include myself because my people weren't involved in it, and I'm not going to go into why, but I'm sure that so many of the folks listening, so many of the folks watching would take great umbrage if we included them in it, because they hopefully have seen the light a bit and have a very different view than our ancestors did, where not only was conservation non-existent, but this whole concept of we are the crown of creation. Boy, that's a pretty sick thing. The earth was not put here for our use and abuse. It's the only home we've got, and we better learn, or we're not going to have any home left. So I will get pretty salty about some of these things because we need to raise the attention. And I'm going to reiterate what Barnaby said about questions. Questions are a wonderful way to keep things going, to learn. I love questions. So as we go along, don't be afraid. Get those questions in there. We will try to hit every single one of them if we can. I will endeavor to give you reasonable answers. And if I don't have the answer, try to give you a source for it. And if I don't have a source for it, give you a big pat on the back for coming up with something we didn't think about. So in 1903, a French ship, actually two French ships, docked in Tasmania. They were there in spite of the fact that the English had sort of claimed Tasmania for their own. The French were there ostensibly to do scientific work. They were doing charting of the coast. They were trying to describe the various animals and plants that were found there. And what was very interesting is not what they reported, but it's what they didn't report. They had the only marsupial, a large marsupial predator in existence on that island, and they never mentioned it. It wasn't until 1906 that a man named George Harris finally decided to recognize this little guy. We're talking, of course, about the thylacine. And he gave it a name that ended up getting changed 3 times before it ended up as Thylacinus cyanocephala. Loosely translated means little guy with a pouch who looks like a dog with a dog head. Although there have been all kinds of other bits and pieces that people have thrown in there in various books. Now, there are 4 books that I am going to have you take a look at. I've got the covers and some pictures from all but one of them. And they are pretty much the only books on that's a German book. They're pretty much the only books on the thylacine. There just isn't that much known about them. If you read all of these books, you'll probably know 95% of what is known about thylacines. That's pretty sad. Mm-hmm. So let's proceed here with our bit of historical background, and then we're going to jump over to some other things. In 1934, the thylacine was finally given its official name, Thylacinus, and the next really important thing that happened was in, did I say 1934? 1834, I'm sorry. In 1880, they put a bounty on this poor animal. That was an absolute scourge. They never were very populous. There were never a lot of thylacines on the island of Tasmania. There are a bunch of population estimates that range from 2,500 to 5,000. That is not very many animals. And Tasmania is a very large island. The thylacines in 1880 had a bounty put on them, and not a little over 50 years later, they were gone. That was it for the thylacine. What a criminal act. But that was when the last known thylacine died, September 7th, 1936, at the Hobart Zoo. Some keeper didn't think that it was worthwhile putting the poor little thing away, and it died of exposure on a cold night. They're relatively sensitive organisms, animals. Pardon me, I'm used to too much science speak sometimes. They were remarkable in many, many, many ways physically. They were one of the best examples of convergent evolution that we could have. In other words, animals that evolve in two different places that are completely unrelated, but they end up looking like each other and having similar habits because of the niche that they each of them occupies. Barnaby, when was the first time you ever heard of a thylacine?
Oh, I don't know. Long time ago, probably 90s at least for me.
And what did you learn?
Well, my first book in cryptozoology was Lauren Coleman's Cryptozoology A to Z, and I'm pretty sure there's a picture of one of those on the cover. And I mean, yeah, it's like modern science, doesn't have much on it, like you said, and they just been pretty much a cryptid for most of my life as far as just what they are. They don't exist. They're just extinct.
1986, they were officially listed as extinct. However, between 1936 and 1986, there were almost no verifiable sightings. So there is every chance that the poor little guy who died at the Hobart Zoo in Tasmania may have been the very last thylacine that we can prove existed, at least in Tasmania. Now, the thylacine was found in three places that we're aware of. So it was found in Tasmania, it was found on the Australian mainland, and it was found in Papua New Guinea. We know almost nothing about the New Guinea animals. There's some pretty good fossil and subfossil evidence from Australia. The Australian story is a very complex one, and we're going to get into some of that a bit later. But let's talk about what a thylacine really was and what it did, what we do know about it. Over and over again, the word shy comes up. It was a very shy creature. It was very retiring, cryptic, as we like to say. It was nocturnal. It was the only marsupial predator other than the devil, the Tasmanian devil. Everybody knows Taz. They, by the way, are in serious trouble right now from a virus, and they're shipping Tasmanian devils to zoos all over the world to try to create assurance colonies. If we had had an assurance colony for thylacine, we might not be having this discussion today. Assurance colonies are incredibly important. I have created assurance colonies for, I'm taking a guess here, but over 20 species. And these are colonies of animals that we breed in captivity and keep in captivity as potential restocking animals or animals that we need for the DNA that they are carrying, because they may have rare alleles, so on and so forth. But ultimately, for the survival of that species, that of course was not done back then. They didn't even dream of it.
Terry,
What were you
do you
going to
know
say, Dana?
is there any of the thylacines outside of the Australian zoos at the time?
At the time that they became extinct?
Well, prior to that, yeah. Had they shipped
Prior
them out
to that, yeah, they showed up at the London Zoo. They showed up at the Washington D.C.
Okay.
Zoo. There were a sprinkling of them in a couple of places. The fact that there weren't more of them tells you that there weren't many thylacines.
Yeah.
And the stories were always very shadowy behind them. How they, who got them, how they got there, who caught them, how did they manage to end up at these zoos. Zoos have a very important part to play, and I wish they would start playing it. They are being pulled away from their primary function, which should be education and conservation, two functions. And they're being pulled away by these animal rights groups. We have more individuals that are stifling conservation from these animal rights groups than any three oil companies. They're doing more damage than Exxon or anybody else by their actions, the misinformation they put out there, and the fact that they plow millions of dollars into their pockets. If you think that the weeping puppy ads on television, if you think that money goes to the animals themselves, you better guess again. These are people who should be ashamed of what they do. Not the average person who donates, but the people who are behind all of it. It's amazing what they have gotten away with over the years. And if you really track them down and look at what they are and look at their histories, they're shameful. They really are. We almost lost the African elephant because of some of their activities in Africa, and I could go on and on. But we're talking about thylacines. Barnaby, what was your impression when you first heard about the thylacine? What did you think about it?
Yeah, they're really a unique animal. I mean, the thing that stands out, I mean, I don't know. We got all these pictures here. I kind of want to bring up some of them and show what you're talking here. Yeah, because we got, I mean, this you said was the German book on them, but we got, different pictures here that show these creatures.
Yeah, can you back up one so we can show the people the frontis page? So if they want to try to find it, they can. Yeah.
Now, is this book is in German, correct?
It is in German, yes. If you don't read German, try to find somebody.
But you can still look at the pictures.
You can look at the pictures, believe me, and you can get the general gist of it, believe me.
Very cool. There you go. All right. So that is the typical thylacine right there. I mean, when you're thinking about these things, the thing you asked what stood out and what I know about them, and that is the huge jaw. I mean, I think most people have seen the picture of this animal at the zoo where it's the mouth is just open so wide, and I don't know of any other mammal or anything that has that wide of a mouth gap. It's very iconic to this creature.
Yeah, that gape is very famous. Mm-hmm. If you notice on the picture you have right here that you've got two what appear to be live animals, and the third one is questionable. That sure looks a lot more like a skin. Thylacine skins were sold as recently as the 1930s. As a matter of fact, there was an auction of a rug made of 8 thylacine skins. If that doesn't make you cry, I don't know what will.
Mm-hmm. That's terrible. What else we got here? A very iconic, the striping on them.
The striping on them is important because it's an identifying characteristic. And the Australian thylacines had fewer stripes, wider spaces between them. The stripes were not as frankly produced as the ones from Tasmania. I know virtually nothing about the stripes on the ones from Papua New Guinea.
Picture of the skeleton.
There's a skeleton, and you'll notice, of course, the very canine appearance. The gross appearance is very canine to the average person. But if you look at the jaws, there's something very strange about them. And you look, and if you, in your mind, you drop that jaw open, it goes way wide. They also have huge molars in the rear, which may indicate that they also took, in addition to being carnivores, they may have also taken in plant material as part of their regular diet, but we just don't know. If you can imagine that, we have almost no information on what they ate in the wild.
That's where I was going with my question. I'm going to try and zoom in kind of on these guys.
Mm-hmm.
So these are actual pictures from the Hobart Zoo, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
You notice that the tail is rigid, unlike a dog's tail, which wags. Their tail is rigid. Another identifying characteristic.
So about how big were these guys? Because obviously the pictures are kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, and that's another thing they don't really know for sure, but they ranged apparently from about 28 pounds to about 55 pounds maximum. There was a great deal of difference between the males and the females, sexual dimorphism. The boys were much larger than the girls.
I really like this picture. It kind of almost looks like a kangaroo with stripes in that one, standing up on his hind legs like that.
Yeah, well, it also tells you why people have made the mistake of thinking they saw a thylacine, because there are some other marsupials that get into that position and have a few stripes on them, and from a distance, they can be confused with the thylacine.
There's some more better pictures, kind of the skull and jaws and stuff. This is a comparison, looks like between a wolf on this side and then a thylacine on this side.
Right. The wolf and the thylacine shared similar fates. It's just that there were a lot more wolves in a lot more places, and that's why we still have a few wolves left. But they were blamed for everything, right down to bad weather. But the thylacines were blamed for attacks on the sheep in Tasmania. That's why they eventually put this ridiculous bounty on them. In hindsight, we know that the thylacines were probably responsible for almost none of the deaths of the sheep. That was almost exclusively the purview of the native dogs and feral dogs of the area. They were the ones who took the sheep down. The thylacines were so shy, and they stayed away from humans as much as they possibly could.
Now, I know most people are probably familiar with, the king toads and stuff over there being an invasive species. Did they have a native dog species over there prior to the thylacine, or was that something that was brought over as well?
Well, when you say native, it was there for a while. They don't know for sure how long. It's kind of like the dingo. No one knows exactly when the dingoes were brought to Australia. They are an invasive species. They were brought over by man, but they've been there so long that they've become part of the natural biome. In Tasmania, the information is really not definitive. There were probably some native dogs. Those native dogs may have been dingoes or dingo-like animals. They may have been brought over at some point in time after after the dingoes reached the Australian mainland. But when the first British and other settlers got there, they brought dogs with them, of course. And dogs will be dogs. They're pack animals. They get away. They start forming packs. They start attacking livestock. It happens to this very day all over the world. Dogs can bring down some pretty good sized creatures, and they have a special love for lamb.
Right here, you can see a good comparison again of the wolf on this side, on the right side of your screen here in the lower corner, and then the thylacine with
The
the
thylacine gape. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then the original photo here on the left from the Hobart Zoo.
Right. That is correct.
Cool. Awesome. We have to take a really quick break here for station identification. Guys, if you want to, if you have any questions about the thylacine or Australia or crocodilians for that matter, or anything like that, get them in the comments and we will get to them right after this. We're talking with Terry Cullen about all things thylacine. And if you want to show your support for the Untold Radio Network, here's how.
Hey, Untold Radio Network fans. Want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.
Awesome. We are back here on the Untold Radio Network, and we are talking all things thylacine. So here's another picture. This one looks like it's more in the wild, Terry.
That may be a museum exhibit.
Okay.
I don't know for sure. There were a couple of very nice museum exhibits that still exist at various museums around the world. And I don't know on that one is the best answer I can give you. I don't know of any actual wild pictures that we can prove were taken in situ, meaning in their environment.
Awesome.
This is again part of the German book, or continuing to be part of the German book. Yeah. There are lots of pictures of dead thylacines and people proudly holding them by their hind legs.
Yep. So if you're a little squeamish, we're going to get to that in a little bit, just because it's as terrible as the pictures are. It's just important, like Terry said in the beginning, that, there's a reason why these things aren't around anymore. And if we forget that, it's probably bigger shame as just, losing them to begin with.
One of the worst pictures for me is they've got a young thylacine down on the ground with a collar on it. And if you know animals and you look at that picture, you can see that animal has just completely given up. He's being held down by the neck. That animal, I would say it's highly likely it died of stress shortly after that picture was taken. That poor thing was as beaten down as anything you can imagine. And I'm not talking about physical beating. I'm talking about what happens to a shy animal when it's exposed to that sort of thing. God, it was a tear-jerking photograph. It's awful. We'll show it to you a little later.
So this looks like some cave art pictographs.
Yeah.
There's one.
Yeah.
Just terrible.
They're ever so proud of, and you can see that it's not a big animal. The size of a small, medium dog.
Nice people are so proud of these, too, it's very much for people that are more familiar with the native, the wolf population in the U.S. and being hunted for damaging livestock. I mean, this is about the same thing that happened over in Australia and Tasmania.
Yeah, and for people who are not aware of this, the only 2 proven wolf bites or attacks had to do with animals having rabies.
Kind of looks more like a little fox in that picture.
Well, the foxes sort of play a part to this as well. Later on, foxes were introduced to Tasmania. Admittedly, this was after the animal was likely extinct or down to such low numbers that no one could find them anymore. But it was just one more insult to the environment. Foxes made their way over from Australia, where they had been brought in to kill off the rabbits. And of course, would they kill off the rabbits? Well, they killed off a few, but those little marsupials who really didn't have any predators to deal with normally had no idea what to do with the foxes. So they were annihilated. The foxes have just badly damaged the populations of the small marsupials in Australia. So now they're having to try to figure out how to get rid of the foxes. But what's even worse are the house cats. The house cats are probably the worst enemy of everything that lives in Australia. There is now a campaign to try to get all of the house cats out of Australia. They have done untold damage. Species after species after species that have virtually disappeared because of the house cats.
That is terrible. You have this ecosystem where you have animals that are not found anywhere else on Earth, just unique species, and just time after time after time, they're being destroyed by invasive species, one after another, that are being, brought in to control the other species that was out of control. Terry, this looks like a list. I know it's in German, but it looks like a list of zoos that actually had the thylacine.
Yeah, it's a good reference, but again, the Germans tend to be meticulous. And if this were in a different book, I might not believe as much as there, but these were, as I said, there's a smattering of zoos there that had thylacines. They did, in fact, do their homework on this. One thing I would like to congratulate you on, Barnaby, is being able to use the word unique properly. It's not more unique or really unique or sort of unique. Unique is a superlative. It's either unique or it's not unique. And gosh, you get a gold star for English in there.
That's the first time in my life. Thank
you. Needs to be pointed out.
Oh, look at the little ones here. Hobart Zoo. See here's one over in Berlin. This one says it's the Berlin Zoo. This is the Berlin Zoo. And then the rest of these three pictures are all from the Hobart Zoo.
Yeah. The pictures in this book, many of them are not found anywhere else. Mm-hmm. They really did a good job on locating some rare pictures. Okay, this is going to be a different book, and we'll come back to this one. By the way, of these 4 books, 3 of them are excellent, and one of them is very good. That's unusual. The folks who did these books did a great job. They really did. All 4 of these books I would recommend to anyone who has an interest in thylacines. They overlap, of course, quite a lot, but there's information in each of them that is ever so worth the effort to read and have in your possession a real live book you can hold and open the pages to. A little push there for the bibliophiles. Last Tasmanian Tiger, that one was pretty much the first of the books on the conservation and loss of the Tasmanian tiger. They were called all sorts of things: Tasmanian wolf, striped tiger, all you name it, they were called. But the Tasmanian tiger seems to be the most common name in today's literature.
Very good. But
that book was one of the older but very well done books. Robert Paddle wrote that one. Put a lot of time and a lot of effort into it. It woke a lot of people up. Let's walk over to some things about extinctions. Extinctions can happen in many, many ways. It's not just we shot every last one of them and they died, although that has certainly happened. Cyclura carinata, the Turks Island iguanas, 3 of the forms that were found in the Turks Island are now completely gone. And that's because U.S. servicemen who were stationed there decided to just have fun and do target practice. And they wiped out 3 forms of that iguana. Gone. Just wiped out every last one of them. Populations get to a threshold point. And that threshold point can be genetic. It can be a lot of different things. Probably most people know what a genetic bottleneck is. It's when the animals are down to such low numbers that there is not enough variety in the genome. They start inbreeding, and depending upon the species of animal, it can happen faster or slower. We still have a lot to learn about inbreeding, but that could bring up a few bad jokes, but we'll leave that alone. The mammoths were a good example of that. Mammoths that were isolated on some of the islands, they died because of inbreeding. They were cut off from other mammoth populations. There weren't enough of them to create sufficient genetic diversity, and their gene pool just started to shrink. The next thing you knew, there were all sorts of recessives that were coming up, and the mammoths fell apart genetically, died out.
Speaking of the mammoths, I mean, we're talking about the genetics and stuff of all these. I know you're aware of the Colosso Bioscience company right now is working on the genomes and hopefully being able to clone and bring back not only the thylacine, but also the mammoth. Do you want to talk a little bit about their work and some of the stuff that you know about that?
I will, but I'm going to finish talking about the methods of extinction, or some of the methods of extinction.
Sure.
Threshold is very important. If you go to Belize, they have some of the best intact forest left in Central America, and yet there are areas where just the butterflies have disappeared. Animal species have just disappeared. Nobody did anything to them. Well, what happened was the butterflies and many other species don't understand that where there's a line that becomes another country, that exists. So what happened was the country that is next door to Belize started to tear up the environment terribly, and the normal patterns that these animals had, the places where they would move from season to season and so forth, they were destroyed. So you lost the animals, even though there was plenty of habitat in Belize. They needed to move. They needed to move from place to place. And once you cut them off from that, they're gone. They just die out. It's insufficient moving habitat, as they call it. There's a lot of other names for it. Prey. What happens to the prey for a predator? If there isn't sufficient prey, or there isn't sufficient forage for the animals that are vegetarian, that's another big thing. And certainly man has had incredible impacts on that. We've cut down everything that resembles a forest and then some. Competition from other animals. And sometimes that's a natural phenomena. And sometimes, these days, more often, it's from introduced animals and pet animals that people allow to go feral. Again, the house cat being one of the worst offenders there. Please don't get me wrong, folks. I am not against people having a house cat. I think anyone who responsibly keeps a house cat, it's a great pet for them. But by God, we created that animal. That's a created animal. And we created it in a way that it lost its ability to function as a normal predator, which means it stopped understanding that when you kill something and you eat it, you shouldn't kill anything else because you're full. We wiped out that in the house cat. House cats just plain kill and keep killing. We bred them that way so they would keep killing mice, rats, and what have you in barns. Mm-hmm. And this has taken place for thousands of years. The average house cat is still very much a wild animal in many ways, but we created them. We wiped out the feeding response and its relationship to the I'm full response. So that's why cats will just keep killing and killing and killing and killing. Dogs are, of course, another sort of created animal, but lots of other foibles that they have. And I love dogs, by the way. I've got 2 of my own, as Barnaby saw last week.
Amazing dog.
Another thing, when we create cities, we create situations, changing the environment's appearance is sometimes a death knell for certain very sensitive species. The Cyclura lewisi, which is the blue iguana in the Cayman Islands, they were down to fewer than 20 animals. Whether or not we can bring them back, it's hard to say. Reptiles tend to be a little more amenable to inbreeding, and if you're careful and outcross as much as possible, we may in fact be able to bring them back. It's not doing us much good because almost all of their area, their niche, has been destroyed. Every time I turn around, there's more homes being sold. They just took out acres and acres of what little habitat they had for an old age home that's being put in there by an Indian company. It just doesn't stop. It just does not stop. The habitat that those guys need is unique. The habitat preference that they have is strong. They took animals at one point from their primary habitat on Battle Hill, that's an area in Grand Cayman, and took them to an area called Salinas. If you looked at it, I defy you to tell me what the difference is between the two. And yet, the animals that they put there, they were gone in a matter of a week. They would not stay there. They also created certain highways on Grand Cayman, and these animals don't want to go across highways. They're very tentative about it, and the females especially. The areas that they had to try to get to lay their eggs were cut off by these highways, especially the Queens Highway on the East End. So look what you're doing to them. We don't understand half of what goes on with these animals, not even a tenth. So anyhow, you had wanted me to go into what's going on in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some interesting things. The director of the Australian Museum has decided, and I think rightly so, that he wants to bring back the thylacine if he can do it. And he's been working on it since 1999. I guess a little before that. And I give the guy a lot of credit because he's taken heat from just about everywhere you can imagine for doing this. There are good reasons for bringing the thylacine back. And he was challenged one day by somebody who said, well, it's just going to end up in the pet market. He said, I couldn't be happier than if I saw every other house on the block having a thylacine. At least they would still exist, and we would have an assurance colony that we could draw from to repopulate Tasmania, repopulate the areas in Australia where they typically had been found. It takes guts to say something like that. Thylacines, sadly, probably would make very good pets. They were timid little animals. In many, many cases, you see pictures of people either poking at them or handling them, feeding them, and so on. They were very amenable to being in a good captive situation. So, if we can do it, perhaps we can create an assurance colony. But, big but here. Where to start? Every time I turn around, I see someone claiming that they've figured out the genome of another animal. More properly, they should be saying they figured out the DNA genome. The DNA is not the be-all and end-all of an animal. It just isn't. The CSI programs on TV have been the worst as far as perpetuating that myth. There are so many what-ifs and exceptions and things not even worth going into here, just confuse people. But beyond that, we're not talking about epigenetics, which is RNA evolution. Just this last week, maybe it's 2 weeks now, they announced that they were able to pull RNA out of one of the preserved thylacines. And I've been waiting for this because this is a major, major, major thing. That's fully 1/3 of the puzzle that we have to solve, is getting the RNA and finding out what it is, stabilizing it, finding out how it relates to everything else. Then on top of that, we've got proteins and enzymes that we have to discover. We have to rehydrate because most of these animals were kept in ethyl alcohol. And ethyl alcohol, even though it preserves the stuff, it leaches the water out. So the stuff will have to be carefully rehydrated. There is challenge after challenge after challenge after challenge before they can actually say, we're going to try to make a thylacine. Cloning is a very, very difficult thing to do. We don't have anywhere near the information that we need to do it. They had originally set a date of 2010 by which they wanted to have a thylacine. They found out very quickly that that was way, way out of line. It's going to be a long time before we see that thylacine if it happens. But the good news is they're still working on it. And the other good news is we may be able to learn things from a live thylacine to help prevent some of the extinctions that are going on right now. Things about these organisms that give us a better understanding of how they operate, what they need, so on and so forth. Animals have innate plasticity. We seldom give them credit for it. It means they can live under a variety of conditions, some more than others. There are some animals that, eat one type of seed and they've got to have that seed or else they're done for. But most animals have some plasticity. It's good to exploit that, especially if they're endangered, to try to get them to survive in other conditions until we can preserve an area where they are normally found. And then reintroduction is another bugaboo. People think you just take animals and drop them back in the wild. Doesn't work that way. We have to be incredibly careful that we're not bringing in illnesses, bad genes, lots and lots of other things. So, too damn complicated, Barnaby.
Mm-hmm. There we go. I posted the link to that article about the RNA in the comments section for anybody that is interested in the rediscovery of it.
Yeah, and Mike Archer is the fellow. He's the PhD from the Australian Museum. The man really is a delight to listen to, and he's fearless. He really is. He's the kind of person that can get things done. And I'm going to get on my milk crates here for a moment, if I may. What we don't have in this world today is very many real animal people, as we used to call them years ago. People who had a commitment to these animals. People who had that commitment because they cared about the species, not because of themselves, but because they truly had a love for the creatures, truly had a love for nature. We've got lots of people who love animals today in a very superficial way, but not in the way that people like Leonard Steininger and people like Clifford Pope and the great naturalists of years ago. These are guys who risked their lives on a daily basis, got bitten by everything imaginable, and went through hell to categorize some of these animals, find out where they were. And unfortunately, so often that information was used as, that's probably a good place for lithium. Let's go there. No more animals. And we're facing that in the Philippines right now, by the way, for lithium. I want to bring up two things. And one of them is where we should start having a conscience. I have rediscovered a couple of animals, more than a couple in my lifetime. And one of them is the Jamaican iguana. You had mentioned that earlier. Rediscovering it created a whole bunch of problem situations, but also opportunities. It was a guardedly good feeling to know that. However, when I rediscovered the Jamaican iguana, I went to the Jamaican Natural History Society where they were having a meeting, and a guy by the name of Patrick Fairbairn, he was a Brit, was officiating at that meeting. I guess he was president of the club. And his response was, "We don't care about any fucking lizards. We're bird people." Doesn't that seem like an enlightened view? This was in the 1980s. It's stifled further discovery of those animals for a number of years. The guy would do nothing about it and just basically buried the idea. I've encountered that time after time, place after place. People, even if they are supposed naturalists, they have their favorite animal. I'm not a bird person, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't fight just as hard to try to keep an animal on the brink from going over that edge and doing what we can to preserve it as part of the natural biome. I was just amazed at that, and I shouldn't have been, but it sticks out in my memory because it was just one of the nastiest things I ever faced when talking to someone about a critically endangered animal, at that time presumed extinct. The Navassa Island iguana, which was one of the largest lizards in the New World, I had the sad opportunity to announce its extinction. I'm probably the last person alive that ever saw one in the habitat. I found two of them and evidence of a third on Navassa Island in the 1960s. Went back, and when I went back in the 80s, it was gone. There was nothing left. In the meantime, I tried to get other people interested. It's a very difficult island to get to. It's dangerous to go there because of what they call the Haitian party boats. Those are essentially pirates who would travel around these islands, and that's exactly what they did. They stole people's ships. They killed people, just like pirates of 300 years ago. So I guess what I'm getting to with all of this is, please, people, get out there and do something, one way or another. We are a nonprofit at Dragonwood Conservancy, and at the very end, maybe somehow I can give you the information that we have. Any donations, if it's okay with you, Barnaby, I would like to at least give our info at that point. Let's get back to the thylacines. What's going to happen? Well, because of Archer, we're going to have a concerted effort at bringing these guys back. Now, the mammoths that you were talking about, maybe we'll be able to do the mammoths. Maybe we won't. The problem with the mammoths is that there are so many different species. And the mammoths that they find here are different than the mammoths that they find in Siberia, that they find elsewhere and elsewhere and elsewhere along the line. And it depends upon the timeline when these mammoths died. Whereas with the thylacine, we're talking about a single species, timeline of a very, very short time. Much more likely to be able to genetically put that back together and make a new one. Do we have any comments or questions so far?
No, we're doing good over there.
Are they awake?
I hope so.
Yo, people, wake up.
They're all reading the RNA study right now, I think. Yeah, that's a good one.
We're not going to put any money on that one.
Yeah. There we are.
Okay.
Yep, Lee's there. Yep.
Okay. We're going to talk just for a moment about science and its place on the internet. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
Okay. I promise I will not beat this to death, but I have been trying very hard to introduce science to the internet in a way that is palatable and in a way that is understandable and in a way that you can have fun doing it. There is no reason why this massive chunk of misinformation that we call the internet and Wikipedia should continue to exist without being challenged. There is so much junk information out there. It doesn't have to be that way. We can use the internet to learn things, to do things, and it can be just as interesting to tell you the truth rather than making up a bunch of stuff. I will refrain from coarse language just because it's your show. If I was on Joe Rogan, I'd be able to throw it out there, Pam. But please, people, support that. Support the idea of doing some educating, but at the same time, you can have fun. You can learn new things. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to be a cellular biologist or a physicist, but you can, in your own way, contribute to it. And if nothing else, learn some things that are important to the survival of our species as well as the other species that are out there. So what were you going to say before I crudely interrupted you there?
We got a little bit of time left here. We're at the end of the hour. I know that there's a couple other things that you want to get to, so I'll let you finish with that. Can you talk a little bit about, I know that these animals are very shy and elusive, and, what are the odds, in your opinion, that there actually are still living members out there of this species? And I know that we had talked a little bit about some stuff with that.
Funny you should ask that. That was my next attack here.
Awesome.
Okay, about 20 years ago, actually it's a little more than that now, a good friend of mine, his name was Athol Davis. Now, to Americans, it sounds like I'm saying Ethel. It's Athol, Athol Davis. He was the curator of entomology, invertebrates, insects, so on and so forth, at the Perth Museum in Australia. Athol Davis was one hell of a good animal guy. He is the man who dated and I don't mean going out with, he was the one who dated the thylacine that was found in a sinkhole. They found a dead thylacine. It was a mummified thylacine, and he was able to date it by forensic entomology, meaning looking at the bugs that had essentially been present, and as they ate their way through what there was of the animal, he could tell how old that animal was and how long it had been there. It was an animal that was in the thousands of years, but not too distant future as time goes on Earth. He was just an amazing man. I've got to tell you, he was a good friend. We spoke frequently, as often as I could afford it. And, we wrote letters back and forth. Anybody remember what that means? There you go. Anyhow, at one point, he decided he was going to share some information with me. What I'm about to tell you is true. What I'm about to tell you is not my ideas. It's not my wish. It's simply what he told me. Athol Davis worked in the field until he was over 100 years old. He was quite a guy. He was always spot on. I have no reason to question him or question his veracity. At one point, the Aboriginal guy who worked with Athol apparently found a thylacine in Australia, on the Australian mainland. What happened after that is a bit muddy. Athol became very, very cryptic about giving any information out to anybody. He probably gave me more than anybody else that wasn't in Australia. They eventually formed a little group. And these were people who had single-engine planes. After they found the first thylacine, they supposedly found a family group of these animals. They would go out every 4 to 6 weeks in airplanes. 6 or 7 planes would take off. Only one would go to the area where these animals were found. That airplane would usually come back in a day or two. they all tried to mimic each other's activities so that nobody could second guess them and figure out where these animals were. Ethel was never sure how many animals there were. He didn't want to disturb this tiny population of animals any more than necessary. After he passed away, I don't know what happened to the group. I was never in contact with any of them. I don't have their names. They really kept everything very close to the chest. And as to whether these animals still exist today, I don't know. I absolutely do not know.
Do you know about when that time period was when he was found that group?
It would have been about 22, 23 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I have several pictures, several photographs that Ethel supplied me with. The photographs were taken by the Aboriginal man. A couple of them ended up being published various places. A couple of them did not. I have these photos somewhere. One of my buildings had a fire in it, and the people who helped to move things in and out must have put them in a place that I don't know about. I have yet to get back with them and find them. But when I do, I promise your listeners that I will bring them and we will put them on your program and take a look. It shows almost unquestionably a thylacine. You can't see the head. It looks like it's digging in through a termite mound or something like that, which would make a lot of sense. That would certainly be an appropriate prey for these guys, eating grubs and termites and so forth. But you can see the entire hindquarters, you can see the tail, and it has fewer stripes than the Tasmanian animals did. Is it worth following up? I wonder. If you send somebody out there and they are able to find this group, how long do you think they'll last? Especially if there's just a tiny relic population. You'd almost have to put a fence around thousands of acres and have it well guarded, or else they'd be gone in no time.
So in that case, let's hypothesize that this small family group, let's say there's 3 to 4 of them out there. What on conservation side, aside from, like you said, putting this fence around them, what would be the best way to use that to bring these back and protect the species?
Well, first of all, if you've only got 4 or 5, there isn't much you can do. You're already at a genetic bottleneck right there. Probably the only hope.
Did you do like a seed program, like a DNA or something, so that if you found other ones, you'd be able to like in vitro fertilize or something?
That's a question that I can't easily quickly answer.
Very good.
So
okay.
I will simply say the possibility does exist, but it's really a complicated situation. We're working on the rhinos right now to try to bring
That's what I was thinking.
Two species of rhinos back. Whether or not we can actually do it, who knows? And we've got a lot more from the rhinos than we have from some of these other animals. There just aren't enough. We would hope that there was a larger group or several small groups of these animals. If that were the case, and if we had, usually we say 200 or more, we can bring them back and have a healthy population as long as we're really careful about outcrossing. Different animals have different thresholds. With reptiles, we've got a little more fudge room. They can be down to a lower number, and they seem to be able to recover without bottlenecking if they've got a little help. That's what we've done with the blue iguanas. Mammals are much more complex. They're not more complex organisms. It's just the problems with them are more complex. There's so little that we know about this whole thing. The IUCN, which is what I belong to, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, they're based out of Switzerland. They are the largest conservation group in the world. And they have been working and I do want to say tirelessly, because there are a lot of really good animal people in that group. They've been working really hard on trying to prevent extinctions. But for everything that we save, there's 50 more that go down the drain. Lack of time, lack of people, mostly lack of money. It's really, really depressing. It's a tough field to work in. People often come up to me and say, "Oh, you're so lucky you get to work with all these nice animals." What's not very lucky is when you go outside and you see that you have more of a species in captivity than exists out in the wild. That's very depressing. And you have to have those animals, because otherwise they're going to be gone. That's our assurance colony. That's an important concept.
Obviously, I haven't worked with as many animals and stuff as you have, but I feel very privileged that the Cincinnati Zoo for a while had the Sumatran rhinos. And on 2 trips, I actually got to see those animals. They are now sent back to Sumatra to work on the breeding program, but I got a chance to see them. And I don't know how many people know about the Sumatran rhino, but there are very, very few of those. It's basically a very furry rhino. And yeah, there's not many of those left either, but I'm very lucky that I got a chance to see them.
Yeah, the Sumatran rhino is in deep, deep trouble, and the Javan rhino is in more trouble. The Bornean rhino is even another story. Don't get me going on rhinos. I love these animals.
All right. I just wanted to bring that up because, like,
Yeah,
there's so few, like everybody that goes to zoos, they say like all zoos are the same. That is one of my least favorite statements ever, because every zoo out there has at least one very unique species that you're not going to find at any other zoo.
not very unique.
Yeah, not very unique.
It's unique.
And yeah. But you have these species that you're not going to find at any other zoo, and that's why it's important to see them. And the Sumatran rhino for me was one of those. So
The number of species that exist in zoos is dropping dramatically every year, and again, much of that is the pressure from these animal rights groups. I don't know what's going to happen in the long run, but pretty soon we're going to have cardboard cutouts in the cages, and that's all it'll be. And then you can wave goodbye to all the animals. Whether or not you like to have animals in captivity, it is in many cases the only way that we will save the species, and that slowly, as we try to re-educate people and try to protect areas that could be potential habitat for these animals, we can then talk about reintroductions. I do reintroductions with crocodilians and several other types of animals. That is also a relatively complex thing, and we learn every year something new about it. We find out we were doing things completely wrong about this or completely wrong about that. The good news is that when you have assurance colonies, you have a bank to draw from, and you have enough animals that if you goofed up on some of the stuff you have learned, and the next group that you put out there, you do a better job with, and you do a better job successively. It's the only way we can do it. It's not like there's a book somewhere that says, okay, this is an XYZ so-and-so. Here's what you do. You're all set. Off you go. Every time we think we have a great success, we look at it, and there's always a downside that you didn't expect. Just way, way, way too many variables that we never take into consideration. And then we could get into quantum mechanics and the quantum principles of indeterminacy, and look at that, huh? Get a smile from them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that does weigh heavily in some of this stuff. The quantum principles of indeterminacy. We'll leave it at that. I want to thank you for having us meaning me and the Dragonwood Conservancy on. I'd like to do more of these shows. I have, over the years, stayed pretty much under the radar. I am no longer doing that. I'm trying to get out to the public more, and with help from nice folks like you, perhaps increase my social media presence and be involved in doing some teaching, doing some things that are really interesting, fun, but have a very positive effect on conservation. We can do that. We really can. We have the ability to do it. We've got little kids out there who could be fascinated as all get out. Just present it in the right way. Present it in a way that captures their interest. Let them love the animals. Let them love the planet that they're on, and let them appreciate the fact that they've got a little blue planet to live on.
Absolutely. For those of you out there interested, there is a link to the Dragonwood Conservancy in the show notes. If you are watching this or anything, it is in the description, and you can go click on that and follow it right there. Give them a like, a share, subscribe on Facebook and all the social media that's out there, as well as, if you can, send him a donation, because Terry does a lot of great work, as he said, with rediscovering species and reintroduction and all of that. So it's very, very important to help with the conservation and, you know, just keeping this world healthy and happy. So anything else you want to add before you show up?
One last little factoid. Our annual budget is about the same as 2 cages at the average zoo. And we are maintaining over 1,000 animals. So we're living on a wing and a prayer. My primary manager hasn't seen a paycheck in a long time, and I have never taken a paycheck in my entire life. I've always had to do 6 other things to try to keep enough coming in to feed the hungry mouths. So please, if you can help us out, it would be appreciated more than you know. And we will always respond to you if you try to get in touch with us, if you have questions. And you can reach us either through our Facebook page, or I'm sure Barnaby wouldn't mind having a question thrown his way as well. He and I are in contact, and we are going to be doing the lake monster thing at the Paranormal show in Milwaukee. As far as I know, I don't think anyone has actually done a roundtable type panel discussion on the lake monsters.
Yep. So October 14th in Milwaukee at the Irish Cultural and Heritage Center. It is a free event, but you do need to register for tickets just so that they can keep a tally of how many people was attendance and stuff like that. So, and I do believe you can get tickets at the door, so you can just come on out. And that is the Milwaukee Paranormal Conference 2023, MilwaukeeParacon.com, Saturday, October 14th. And if you're interested in going out and looking for Bigfoot and learning more about that, I will also be doing a Bigfoot hike near Milwaukee. That's all we can say publicly, on Sunday, the 15th. And all that information and tickets and everything is on the website, MilwaukeeParacon.com. If you can't find it there, head on over to WisconsinCaps.com and click on the public events page, and all of our events that we are going to be at, speaking at, and doing stuff with, there are links there.
Come see Barnaby and me.
Definitely. Awesome. All right, Terry, thank you so much for all your time and your information. And again, if you get those pictures, you find them, we'll definitely share them and have you back to talk more about the thylacine and the work and all kinds of other cool stuff. So,
did we not even get a question?
No, I think I have not seen, just a lot of comments.
That's it. We're coming to hunt you down. We're going to appear in your household and ask you questions.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Come check us out at the convention. We'll both be there. So
thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Terry. We'll see you later.
Barnaby, take care, please.
All right, guys, that is our show for this week. Coming up next week, we return to the North American Wood Ape Conservancy, and my guest will be none other than Bob Strain. So if you're interested in all things wood ape, come on back and check us out next week right here at noon Central Time on the Untold Radio Network. Until then, guys, I'll see you on the edge.